Welcome, or shall I say, on guard, to True Blue Podcast. This is our 8th episode of the month, and the goal of True Blue Podcast is to shed light on what makes student athletes human. This was launched by Duke Athletics and Blue Devil Network to shed light on these amazing student athletes. I'm Shelby Bumgarner, your host, and our 8th guest is Monica Balakrishnan. Monica is on the Duke women's fencing team, and we are so excited to shed light on growing up in Houston, her passion for community service and academics, along with growing the sport of fencing and what fencing is all about. Welcome, Monica.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Finals are picking up along with fencing season as well. How are you feeling?
We just kind of finished our last fall meet, which went pretty well. The girls, we hit down Princeton. Princeton's #1 right now. And so we kind of
That's incredible.
Hit them with a bang, yeah. And we're ready for the spring. We're ready to hit it.
Let's start at the beginning. Yeah. Houston. Yeah. We don't have a problem here, Monica. You grew up in Houston. How did that advance your academic and athletic experience?
Some motto that I like to live by is everything happens literally for a reason. I wouldn't have started fencing if we hadn't moved down to Houston. And so basically, while I was there, I started fencing, and it genuinely, has been obviously, a long-lasting journey since then. But I think that living in Houston has been like a really, really, fun environment. I think that Houston gets a name for being one of the most diverse cities in America, and genuinely, it really is. When, I'm just walking around, and just the place in general is it's a kind of up-and-coming place. That's the way I like to think of it, because it's not like, a very, historic place necessarily, but at the same time, it's also not like, this tech hub or, crazy thing. It's definitely a place where people are, coming and settling down. Can I see myself there in 15 years? Probably.
Fencing is a very niche sport. Not many people know about it or introduced to it. How did you learn about fencing?
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, literally I walk around and it's like, well, I'm ready for the next person who's like, yeah, what is fencing? A fence? And, they're like, huh. So while I was in Denver, I did Taekwondo. I did Taekwondo for about 6 years. I got my second-degree black belt. I was like this little kid just kicking, punching, doing things. I wasn't a violent kid, all right? But I did, when I got my second-degree black belt, I wanted to do weapons, bow staff, nunchuck, that fun stuff. They weren't going to give
low-key stuff.
Super
low-key stuff.
But they weren't going to give, an 8-year-old, a big stick, and go crazy with it. So right next to the Taekwondo place when we, moved down to Houston, was a fencing academy. Again, I was like, I don't know what fencing is. Like, my mom was like, just go check it out. So I walked in. My first coach was there, and I met her. I talked to her, and I started fencing. Like, genuinely, such a spur, happy coincidence thing.
How did the skills of Taekwondo impact your fencing skills?
Fair enough. Ooh, I want to say that definitely fencing, I think, gets an interesting rep because it's this physical chess aspect. The physical part definitely came from the Taekwondo. The endurance, the flexibility, the just power, strength definitely comes from being able to just move around on the piste. That also, weirdly enough, has actually impacted me as a fencer. I think that my fencing style is kind of, more sparring and more actual, combative, So I think that that's been an interesting, I'm reflecting as we're talking. I'm like, how has Taekwondo kind of pulled in? But I think that kind of athleticism has actually come from Taekwondo. It's made me an interesting style of fencing. That's what I like to say.
Your position is an epee, which is a straightforward, all-for-nothing type of fencing. Would you say that describes you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because my academy in Houston actually only does epee. So epee, foil. Fencing has 3 weapons: foil, saber, and epee. Each weapon definitely has their own style, their own, technique and such. And epee definitely, it's full body target, right? So you can hit from the top of the head to the tip of the toe. And generally, it's funny because I think among fencers, we joke about, you're definitely a saberist. You're a saber build, but you're also a saber, character. Some of us are, foil characters. Epee. I don't think that that's me necessarily. I don't think that my personality type is epee.
Are we talking about horoscopes? Or
yeah,
are we
no, for real.
Okay.
But I feel like at the same time though, there's definitely a patience, a calmness that an epeist has, and that definitely is me.
You said that fencing is like a game of chess. Use your mind, use your body. What's the hardest thing about fencing as a sport?
Definitely this balance. I think that definitely a hard part of fencing is just being able to be there and be mentally present all the time, 100%. Which is why, I love my teammates, and I know that, the struggles and stuff that we go through definitely is that balance between the physical and then the mental side, because, half of fencing is just how well your brain can handle, right, and cope and be constantly thinking and adjusting. So, yeah, I think that's been interesting.
You're a very talented fencer. When did things start to pick up for you competitively?
Yeah, so my academy, actually, a little shout out to them in Houston. Again, everything happens for a reason. My coach, when I, moved down, I didn't know this, but, he was the 2012 Olympic coach, 2016 Olympic coach, 2020, and now 2024. So I came to probably the best club in Texas for epee, and since then I've been around, and after being in a great club, you're around great fencers, and a lot of these fencers were recruited to places, recruited to colleges, right? So this idea of kind of recruitment and fencing in college actually was pretty early on.
When recruiting started to pick up, why Duke?
Oh man, the classic. You're making me think of this, question I put on the application like years ago. But no, I mean, genuinely, and I think, most athletes will agree with this, it really is this idea where Duke is the best academic and athletic school. It genuinely is a place that you can flourish. But I think the other big why for me about why Duke is the fact that thanks to donors and stuff, I'm able to be here on a scholarship and being able to give back to my parents. Fencing, unfortunately, is an expensive sport. That's why it's very hard to get into, despite it being also a very niche sport. And so I think that's where being able to, give every penny that I possibly can back to my parents, because they have spent a lot of time and money. Being able to be here thanks to people, who are graciously enough, giving me a scholarship is genuinely a big reason why Duke was such an amazing place.
Monica, your passion for your sport, fencing, is contagious. In 2019, you won the Spirit of Sport Award for fencing by USA Fencing. Insane! What was that experience like?
The funniest thing is I got to know 2 weeks before Summer Nationals that I got this award, that I was nominated, and it was actually by a really esteemed Olympic fencer of mine, who is a mentor, who genuinely has been, a coach and a mentor for me since I started fencing. She has, been with me through thick and thin. She knows my family. She knows, just my drive and everything that I stand for. And I think that being able to see that, people appreciate, the things that I put out there, and, the passion that I have for the sport, the passion that I have for, lifting people up in the way that I am, definitely was, amazing. I think I distinctly can remember, standing on that stage, getting my little certificate and, paper and whatever, and she was the biggest smile in the crowd. She was just clapping me on, and I was like, wow, Jessica, you're actually amazing. So I think that genuinely, 2019 was a while back, but it's definitely going to stay in my mind.
You're amazing. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, of course. Transitioning to college fencing, you fit right in. Your first year, you placed 12th in the ACC Championship. Your second year, you placed 7th. Yeah. What was that experience like?
Definitely, my performance for the past 2 years and going on to, my junior year now, definitely has not changed. And I think that's something that's interesting when it comes to fencing. And I feel like maybe other sports also experience this, where it's you come in and college can really, just help you. Ideally, you want to just, stay at your best game, right? And I think that that's definitely something that all the Duke coaches and everyone around is really just trying to strive for that, right? They're just trying to be, there to make you the best version of yourself, right? They're not trying to change your game. They're not trying to change much of a style, because, you can't, right? Especially in an inherently mind sport. So I think that that's been something that's been interesting from a transition, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to, what this year is going to bring, what next year is going to bring, and yeah.
How do you balance fencing being an individual and team sport?
Oh, that's a good one. So that's part of the transition, actually. In high school, and I feel like, kind of growing up, it is very individualistic. You're okay, I'm fencing for myself. I have these results, I'm using this for recruiting, all this stuff, right? when you come to Duke, and I think that's something that, us as upperclassmen try to instill to the freshmen, because that is a big transition, right? Now it's not so much you're fencing for yourself, you're fencing for a bucket, you're fencing for a win to put into the Duke bucket. And that's definitely been something that's like interesting, because it definitely changes the way that you fence. It changes the fact that you have teammates behind you that are saying, hey, you win, you lose, we're behind you, right? Pick up, move on.
What changes do you want to see in the fencing landscape?
See, I think that's a hard question. And genuinely, the reason I say that is because, I've talked about this barrier of being able to get into fencing. Like, mine was just, this lucky hap coincidence. Like, I don't know where I would have been if I didn't, bump into that, this academy. That being said, I think something else is obviously from the money aspect, as well as the just being able to, get access to the sport. But I think that something interesting that has been coming up is especially places like, for example, in New York. I'm trying to think of like other places, but there's places in the U.S. that are trying to open up to minorities. For example, there's a club called Peter Westbrook in New York that is opening fencing up to different just free classes to minorities and blacks and people who just don't have the access necessarily. And the same thing they're doing in Houston. That's an area that's very minority centric. And that's something that is really interesting, because as a niche sport, right, it's like, fencing will never be a football, right? Fencing is never going to be this, revenue sport. But it is the sport that people who get into it can appreciate. And, big shout out to, Team USA fencing. They got 2 golds and a bronze.
Woo-woo!
Like they're killing it, right? They're making a name for the sport. And I think that's the big thing. So, yeah.
You say fencing's not football, but with your taekwondo skills, if I was a football player, I would be quite nervous. If there's any listener here that is interested in fencing, why would you say that they should try it? Why is it important to you?
I think the big thing is this idea that different, like, it's almost like it's like a personal thing for me in a way, because for me, growing up, my parents and generally with sports, I think something that I've especially adopted here at Duke is the idea of kind of breaking some boundaries. Fencing, as I said, gets this rep for being, a very, white-dominated, white privileged, rich, elite sport, right? But at the end of the day, if you give someone this, this equipment, right, and you say, hey, these are the steps, this is the motion, try it, right, then they will. So someone who's interested in doing it, right, then being able to just, find the place, find the academy, find the club to just get started is the big thing, because there should be no barrier, right, that people, should not be able to not find, if that makes sense.
Monica, not only are you a weapon in the fencing landscape, you are an academic weapon. I think this is the first time ever that I've had to read off your accolades. You are an AP scholar, a PSAT national finalist, a USA Biology Olympiad semifinalist, an ACC academic team finalist. The list goes on and on. Wow. Why are academics so important to you?
Yeah. So that's the other big kicker, right? I think growing up in my parents are from India. They immigrated here to the U.S. Growing up in a very academic focused place household where obviously brain and mind work together, right? But brain and body also work together, and I think that's a big thing where academics were something that my parents instilled, that academics obviously come first, and there's standards and limits, right? To there's all these things your mind can do, right? The more you cultivate it, the more you work on it, the better it's going to be. But ironically enough, to kind of twist in some aspect into your question, I think the other thing is like this idea that my parents also saw the value in sports and how that affected my academics, because at the end of the day, you get stress from sports that translate into your academics that help you be a better, academic weapon, right? And so, the focus on academics comes from the fact that that's part of culture, that's part of what, my background comes from, but it's also, your mind is only as better, right, when you put your body first as well, right? So I think that that's a big thing. Yeah. Sorry, I kind of like...
I think you could do a TED Talk about that. That's incredible. Along with academics, community service is also a huge passion of yours. You were a Presidential Service Gold Medalist. Gold medalist!
Yeah.
Wow! What does community service mean to you?
Yeah. So I think within the Duke context, I mean, in terms of, student athletes and such, the big thing is like, we're all, regardless, even if you're a Durham native, right, you don't live on this campus, right? We are all, we're all people that have come from different places and have different backgrounds, right? If we can make some impact while we're here on the Durham community, on the, climate, on, whatever it is, right, while we're here in the 4 years, or, 5 years, I guess. But if you can make an impact, why wouldn't you, right? And I think that's the big thing is like from a community service standpoint, whether that's within your team, whether that's within like, you individually, right? If you're able to just, connect with the place that you're in, right, that's not only gonna help them, that's also gonna help you.
This past summer, you went to South Africa with the ACE program with Duke. How did this trip impact you?
I mean, I think I talked about this for our team and stuff, but like it was such a great experience. It's just being able to experience and see, the fact that we're in this shared space with different stories and different backgrounds, right? And being able to appreciate that Duke gave us that opportunity to do it.
Can you tell me what you did specifically in South Africa?
Yeah, so specifically in South Africa, we worked with different, they're called ECDs, Early Childhood Development Centers. And so we taught, kids like, basic English, and, we worked with like kids in different townships within South Africa. We played rugby with kids. We taught them, how to use laptops and, just basic math, sciences. And then we worked with a couple of nonprofits on ground. One of them is Ladles of Love, which is like a soup kitchen kind of vibe. But they've grown, and it was just cool to be able to obviously be in a new place among, other mission, kind of project-focused things. We obviously saw the place. We experienced, being in Cape Town. We got to see so many cool, tours and so many, obviously amazing, animals, like all that fun stuff, right? But I think that overall, just being able to be in that place and have everything, super organized, right? Being able to still, engage in community service and volunteering, but also being with new people, meeting new people, right? And just having an amazing time overall.
Monica, as if you couldn't be more impressive, you're a female entrepreneur. Tell me about Teens for Vaccine.
So over COVID, this is not something that is completely novel, but it's a little pat on the back for me. Definitely,
and that's okay.
Yeah. But I think definitely in Houston, during COVID, there were two big things that I kind of started, and this was just out of me seeing in my community within Houston. Houston, as I mentioned, is a very diverse place, but unfortunately, it also is a little bit in some areas are not super developed. They're not the safest places, and COVID definitely hit that. COVID definitely made an impact, obviously around the world, but I saw it within my community, and so. One of the things I started was Teens for Vaccine, as you mentioned, and what it was is basically it was a nonprofit organization that I started with some help within a couple of friends who knew kind of data and like analytics to help people get the COVID vaccine. That was a big thing where they were just like, I don't know where to go, I don't know how to get it, I don't know what it's going to do to me. So we created a little website, a little how to do it, where to go. We created a site that showed where all the open available sites are, where you can go and get a vaccine, and then we booked them appointments and showed them how to do it. The other bigger thing actually that I think still gives me just so much joy. Basically, it's called Limitless Minds. Limitless Minds it was a bigger organization that started in Edison in New Jersey, and then I reached out to the founder, and then I started a chapter in Houston. That basically it's a tutoring organization, and it's a tutoring organization for kids from K through 12. And basically you match a tutor that is a high school student to a 2D in one of those grades, and in any subject. And I think the beauty of that is we just had, it was basically a little spreadsheet, and we'd be like, okay, fill out this form and say what your kid's interested in learning in. We have a tutor who could potentially be teaching your kid how to crochet. and literally they would meet for an hour, and we were just that platform that connected people. But the stories and the like emails and the thing, like I just like it genuinely is like so sweet. Sometimes going through that inbox, because the emails and stuff that I'd get being like, wow, my kid was in shambles. I was in shambles because my kid was like, you know, throwing a fit and being like, I'm so bored, I want to go outside. And then I could like be like, hey, no, remember you have tutoring with, you know, Savannah at 5 p.m. and guess what? You're gonna do blocks today. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And then, you know, she'd send me like, the mom or someone would send me a picture of like Savannah playing blocks on like a Zoom call. And she'd be like, today was the best day ever. Thank you, Limbaline. And I'd be like, I was literally a facilitator, bro. But hey, I appreciate you nonetheless. But that genuinely sometimes would make my mind, because I was just like, this is the big reason, you know, of like what, you know, like I want to go into medicine. This is the big reason why. Just because, you know, the joy of being able to just bring joy to people, you know, and that's enough to just fuel me through the day. I know that life's going to be grueling. I know it's going to be hard. But just being able to just impact someone with literally just a smile is all I need, genuinely.
In addition to your neuroscience major, you've done extensive research for Alzheimer's. Tell me about that.
The thing is that whatever research I did, I wanted to make sure it was something that was interesting. And for me, I think the big thing was to just like, the lab that I'm working in is actually, it's kind of a combo between behavior disorders and then of course Alzheimer's, Tourette's, Parkinson's. So I'm interested in, you know, neurological development disorders, but within that is such a big umbrella. And I think that it's just like, it's just heartbreaking, because I think it was in my class like, you know, a week ago, we were talking about the fact that, you know, in the United States, there's 10 million people who are living with Alzheimer's, you know, and it's just growing and growing and growing. And it's just, you know, it's heartbreaking to see. So I think that's a big thing when it comes to research and when it comes to, you know, just being able to do a lot of these things. When it comes to the like opportunities that Duke gives to us as undergrads, is just whatever, you know, as much time as, you know, I have in the day, right? I'm gonna try to squeeze as much as I can, but I also have limits, right? And so the big thing for me is just being able to be happy about the things that I'm doing, because that makes it worthwhile, right? If I'm running from one thing to another, right, I want to be able to be sure that what I'm doing, I like doing, right? That makes it okay to run from one thing to another, right? And so I think that's a big thing.
You have so many things that fill you up and that you're very good at. What's the dream job?
Right now, just based off of like shadowing and stuff, and something that's interesting is, you know, a little throw in here is I'm a neuroscience major, political science minor. The poli-sci is the kind of kicker there, and the reason why is because along with, you know, my med side, I also know my personality, you know, just with interacting with me and, you know, from others watching.
You're not outgoing at all.
No. But that's the big thing is I don't want to just, you know, just be able to just practice medicine. I want to be able to do something with it. Obviously, I know public health, public policy are big things, but if I want to consider something like law or even, you know, going into politics one day, it's always good to have that background. Unfortunately, medicine is politics, you know. It's about how well you can, you know, talk to people, how well you can work around, you know, your boss, you're this, you're that. And so I think that being able to hone the personality and the characteristics that I've been blessed to have, you know, been working on for, you know, the 20 years now that I've been alive, are things that I just want to keep honing. And so the dream job one day is maybe, you know, an MD, JD in pediatric neurosurgery and like, you know, a lawyer, like something, you know, you never know, right? But I definitely am trying to be open, but I really just, you know, want to use whatever platform I am to be able to, you know, get to a higher level.
Monica, you're special. You are so gifted. You are Duke, in my opinion. You represent community service. You represent excellence in academics and athletics. You are so well-rounded. You were an excellent 8th guest to True Blue. It was a pleasure to be in your presence, and I can't wait to watch you succeed at Duke and in life.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Shelby. I appreciate it.
You're the best.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.